Should we give it like 2 minutes to see if people hop on?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Cool.
How's your day?
It's been good. It's been a pretty slow day. I haven't done much. My brother's baking a cake, so
cool. That
yeah.
sounds exciting.
Yeah, he's like super into cooking, baking, and Eid is coming up for Muslims. So he's like, I'm gonna make a sheep cake because Eid is like the day that like Muslims like will like sacrifice a goat. So he's like, I'm gonna make a sheep like shaped cake. And I'm like, okay. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, he ate sushi the other day. It's very convenient having this little chef. Yeah. What about you? What have you been up to?
I've been working on a puzzle all day mostly. And
what kind of puzzle is it?
I got this like Bob Ross puzzle set, and so it's like 2 puzzles, and one is of a painting, and then one is of him painting a painting. So I finished the painting.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So I'm doing that, and I need to find more because they're really fun, and I like that it's not like huge and like overwhelming to have to like do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that, and then I went on a walk, which I didn't think I was gonna keep walking once my class ended, but look at me now, still walking.
What's the weather like over there?
A lot of humidity. It's like in the 90s every day, and then the humidity is like 50 and above.
Humidity.
Yeah, humidity makes it so bad.
But humidity is like the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Like dry heat is fine. But yeah.
Humidity is not fun. No. And Georgia loves humidity, so.
Yeah, I couldn't. I remember when I like went to DC when like school started, it was so humid. I was like, how do you expect me to live here?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I first moved into my dorm, I used to keep my windows open because it was really nice just to be able to hear like all the outdoors. But it got so humid every day in my room. It was awful. So
I know. I can't do humidity. Every summer I'm like, I like winter. And then every winter I'm like, I like summer. But yeah, especially because like in Michigan, they just go to the complete extremes. So like your summer gets like really hot. Like today I went outside and I was like, I can't like step on the like concrete without my feet burning off. But then like the winters are like a different story. Like don't even talk about Michigan winters, are so bad. So yeah. Should we get started?
Yeah, I think we should get started.
Cool. So I'm gonna share my screen. Share. And then present. Oh, wait, before we do that, we should do intros.
Mm-hmm. Or we can have it up while we do intros.
Okay, you can still see me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to go first?
Yeah, my name's Andrea. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm 20, and I'm one of the Vote for Our Future fellows.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
I said, and the deputy music director. Gonna plug the music team.
Yeah, I'm Khadija. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Detroit Fellow for the Vote for Our Future campaign. And yeah, so today we're going to present getting to the roots of the Green New Deal, but specifically about Detroit. So let's start.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to start?
Yeah. So I guess just talking about how is the climate changing. So as you can see, the Earth's global temperature has risen 1 degree Celsius since pre-industrial levels and will continue to do so. In Michigan, there are very heavy rain events, the heaviest 1% of storms, which now dropped to 31% more precipitation in the Midwest than they did 50 years ago. Increased temperatures have also reduced winter ice, cover on the Great Lakes, which may allow for more evaporation to occur, causing overall lake levels to decline. And also the unexpected changes in temperatures are affecting the range and distribution of certain fish species, which allows the spread of more invasive species and degrading the quality of our beaches. And so this is kind of like some of the small effects that we're seeing over time as the climate is changing, but like they're going to have such monumental impacts on our environment and our communities. And it's really important that we start to recognize that.
Yeah. Also, just bouncing off that, if you guys remember the polar vortex about 2 years ago, where it got like Arctic level cold in Michigan and a lot of northern United States, it's definitely like we can kind of see more intense like outcomes of climate change in the most recent years. So yeah. So what's at stake is the Earth's global temperature is expected to rise by 4 degrees Celsius by 2100 if drastic worldwide changes aren't going to be made immediately. This is inevitably and irreversibly going to alter every aspect of life on Earth. So I'm assuming if you're tuning in and you're watching this, you're someone who cares about the climate. This is kind of a big thing that we're all talking about all the time. This is why climate organizing is a thing. And so, yeah, it's like what's at stake with every environmental organization is kind of that at the moment.
Yeah, so talking about how this will affect our seasons and food systems, places like Detroit, Dearborn, Poughkeepsie, and Inkster are going to be hit the hardest by changing weather patterns. Food insecure cities, which are predominantly Black and brown, will be the most affected by a change in our food systems. And overall, across Michigan, there will be a shift in the type of food we have access to, both in urban and in rural areas. And Michigan has a lot of agriculture and farming, so it's going to be drastically affected. And the foods we have access to will look a lot different in the future. And so if we look at the chart or the kind of map that you see, it has the different areas that are going to be decreased in the future. And what's in red is the economic costs, and what's in blue are the economic benefits. And so it's just another change kind of that we're talking about that we're going to see in the future if we're not taking the action that we need to
now. So some environmental issues, these are kind of more catered towards Michigan and Southeast Michigan specifically, are air pollution, water quality, and healthcare. So Detroit has some of the most polluted zip codes in this country. Detroit is also the blackest city in Michigan, one of the blackest cities in the United States. So that's not a coincidence. Those obviously tie together with environmental racism and all. Detroit's also where the auto industry was kind of born, and even to this day, there's so much toxic fumes going into the air every single day, and the neighborhoods surrounding it are Black and brown neighborhoods, and it's raising health concerns in those neighborhoods, such as I believe one in four kids in Detroit in these zip codes have asthma. It's causing higher risk of cancer and kidney failures and diabetes, etc. So these health concerns are just getting worse and worse. And then the other thing is water quality. We've all heard about Flint, Michigan, but this is also, the water crisis is also happening in Detroit and a lot of these lower income Black and brown communities. For example, I believe in 2014, Detroit started closing off a bunch of public schools because there's increased level of lead and contamination in the water systems. And all of this kind of ties together with healthcare, because if if the people who are being affected, whose health is being affected by this crisis, are lower income Black and brown families, they're also the ones who don't have immediate access to healthcare, who it's going to be a lot harder to find solutions to these problems and kind of go like, find a solution to this problem. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess, and if you want to talk more about this too, please do contribute. But I guess this leads us to the kind of purpose of this presentation, which is talking about the Green New Deal, and what we are hoping to see in order to make the changes that we need in order to kind of mitigate a lot of these issues that we're talking about in the last few slides. And so this is like one of our main points. So I guess, could you go to the next slide?
Yeah, of course.
So I guess,
yeah, you can go.
Sorry, yeah. Just about the Green New Deal, or I guess answering what is the Green New Deal, because like in the last slide, it was just kind of like, this is our solution. But the Green New Deal is a resolution to address climate change through a just transition to renewable energy sources. It's a vision for the future. It addresses like structural change to our economic and energy systems, immediate and crucial climate action, and addresses socioeconomic inequality. And that's something that we really need to see from a bill that's addressing all of this, which we're going to touch on a lot. But it's just really important that we're keeping our communities, obviously in focus as we're looking towards solutions. And this is a resolution, my apologies, that's going to help us to do that.
And the Green New Deal is something that's incredibly critical for Detroit, because Detroit and a lot of surrounding cities are facing mass unemployment. They're facing a lot of the direct effects of climate change. And so like, it's like a place where the Green New Deal is needed. And a lot of people even refer to Detroit as the potential engine of the Green New Deal. So that's something that we touch on more as we keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what the Green New Deal isn't, because there are definitely a lot of assumptions and there's a lot of fake news about what the Green New Deal is. So it is not an anti-hamburger. There's no mention of cows at all. There's a lot of people think that, oh, the Green New Deal means that we're all going to have to go vegan. It means this, it means that. No, that's not true. It's not a loss of jobs. A lot of people also assume that the Green New Deal is just going to shut down all of these jobs and just leave millions of people unemployed in the country. But it's a green transition to cleaner jobs and a more sustainable future. So some economists even estimate that like over 20 million new safer jobs could be created through this resolution. So yeah, the Green New Deal is not anti-flying planes. Another thing people talk about a lot, they think that the Green New Deal means, oh, I have to ride my bike everywhere, I can't fly anywhere. The Green New Deal is more of a systematic change that we are hoping to see, although individual action is incredibly important and it's incredibly needed in movements like these. What we're talking about with the Green New Deal is the whole system, a transition of the way that our economy functions, the way that we as a society function, and transitioning that to a greener, more sustainable future. So yeah, these are all propaganda, fake news that are trying to push people away from the potentials of a Green New Deal. So yeah, next time anyone tries to tell you that the Green New Deal is anti-eating meat, tell them, no, it's trying to create systematic change.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess that brings us to what the Green New Deal actually is. It is focused on renewable carbon neutral energy by 2030. It is a just transition for all workers. It is a complete economic transformation in the energy grid, and it is requiring a mass mobilization of our government and our people to combat the climate crisis. And so, just like building off of what Khadija said, like there's so many misconceptions about what it is not, but like none of those even really touch on what it actually is. Like none of it even play off of the truth. And so it's really important that, like coming from this presentation, but also just like in general, uh, having a really solid understanding of what the Green New Deal is really important so that we can provide that kind of context to people in the future, because this is what we need in order to make sure that our future and the future of our communities are healthy and sustainable.
Yeah. So if this kind of sounds familiar, the New Deal was enacted between 1933 and 1939. And it was basically a series of programs, public work, and projects enacted by Franklin D. Roosevelt. And it created a response to the needs of relief, reform, and recovery after the Great Depression. One thing to keep in mind is that the New Deal provided all of these things for white America. And it didn't really touch on Black and brown communities. So that's something different that the Green New Deal is doing. But the New Deal did put thousands of people to work in Detroit and help boost the economy. Things that were like seen through the New Deal in Detroit were low rent housing, some schools were built, post offices were built, and overall Detroit's economy was seen to go up and community was seen to strengthen. So the Green New Deal is something that, like, the New Deal was successful in Detroit, and the Green New Deal we believe would be even more, because the Green New Deal is holistic and addresses environmental racism. It looks at communities in a more holistic way with a more holistic approach. Detroit is an incredibly resilient city. If you've ever been there, if you've ever, even if you haven't, you probably know that. Detroit has been home to like a lot of labor unions. It has a really strong sense of community, and it has a lot of capacity and willpower that is needed to establish the Green New Deal and lead the way towards a just transition and a better future. So, yeah. Oh, sorry, I kind of touched up on this a bit.
Yeah. No, yeah, like Khadija mostly covered this, but yeah, this Green New Deal is inclusive, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's extremely important moving forward.
Yeah. So do you want to
go? Yeah, economic justice and a just transition. And so this quote from the Green New Deal is really important. It's the duty of the federal government to create a Green New Deal to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition for all communities and workers, and to create millions of good high-wage jobs and ensure prosperity and economic security for all. And so we've talked a lot about like the need for a just transition, but we haven't really said exactly, well, what is a just transition? And so this kind of really touches on what a just transition is, and that we are not getting rid of jobs, but we're transitioning jobs to be to go from unsustainable jobs to sustainable jobs. And that's the way that I guess we're able to shift what we're doing and shift our economy without leaving people behind.
Yeah, and kind of building off of that, Andrea already talked about it quite a bit, but when we talk about a just transition, we're talking about safe union jobs, increasing minimum wage to an actual livable wage, education and training for new jobs, universal health care, public transit, and it's basically trying to build and maintain equity and break the cycle of wealth accumulation and corporate control of the energy system. So a just transition with the Green New Deal is inclusive and it's addressing all the needs of all people, and it's realizing that certain people are affected by climate change much worse than others. Oh, did I just go for it? Okay, sorry. The Green New Deal aims to build and maintain equity, and it's definitely something that in a lot of lower income cities and communities, something that's really needed to help change and improve the way of life and the quality of life. So using the just transition and using using the just transition that the Green New Deal offers is something that allows like a holistic approach and something that's really needed, as I said earlier. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
looking forward to a just transition for Detroit, and what does that look like? So this is the same quote, so I'm not going to read it a second time. But when it was like announced that the second round of the 2020 presidential debates would be held in Detroit, our residents from Indigenous, Black, and Brown communities, environmental activists, union workers, and lawmakers across the state kind of came together to form the Frontline Detroit Coalition. And they were pushing for radical transformation on how the city functions, pivoting from reliance on fossil fuels and creating jobs rooted in green and sustainable economy, and advocating for an equitable distribution of resources so that all people in Detroit may thrive. And the coalition is led by like dozens of organizations, including the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition, the Sunrise Movement, Sierra Club, the Climate Justice Alliance, and so many more. And so Detroit and its people, everybody's ready and willing to create change. And this is a conversation that, as we're having it, we need to make sure that we have frontline workers at the forefront of it. We're already seeing the resilience of this like community through this Frontline Detroit Coalition, pushing to make this agenda known and making sure voices are heard. But it's important that we continue to do so and continue to listen to frontline communities about this and continue to kind of see the ways in which we're going to get so many massive benefits from shifting to this way of living, passing this resolution. And so I guess when we look towards what a Green New Deal or a just transition looks like for Detroit, we have to look to these communities that are already talking about this, look to that coalition and look to those organizations to help kind of learn from and lead that conversation.
Yeah. So this is now we're kind of going to talk about what the Green New Deal would look like in action. And so it was introduced in February of 2019. And so let's talk about that. So one of the big things that the Green New Deal kind of addresses and emphasizes on is environmental injustice, environmental racism. And so environmental racism is the fact that Black Americans are 3 times more likely to die from air pollution than their white counterparts, according to the EPA. It is the fact that Black and Brown people are disproportionately affected and more likely to live by toxic landfills. And like power plants. So it's all of these things that are interconnected. And so when we talk about climate change, when we talk about a just transition, we can't ignore that certain people are being affected by this crisis much more than others. Like look at Flint, Michigan, for example. It's not a coincidence that it's a low-income city. It's a predominantly Black city. None of that's a coincidence. So climate change and other environmental issues disproportionately impact frontline communities and exploited communities. That is including communities of color, Indigenous people, migrant communities, low-income workers, and the poor, women, de-industrialized and rural communities, elder people, unhoused people, people with disabilities, and young people. So yeah, like certain communities are definitely hit harder by climate change. And another thing is that white flight exists, so and gentrification. So in Detroit, after the auto industry crashed, a lot of white people were able to leave. They live in the suburbs. And And the people who had to deal with the after effects and the people who are still dealing with them are the people who can't leave, who don't have that privilege, who don't have the money and the resources to get up and leave their neighborhoods. And that is Black and brown people and low income workers. So those are the frontline workers in Detroit who are affected by the climate crisis, and that's how it's connected to environmental racism. So yeah.
So yeah, I guess what does the Green New Deal say about environmental injustice? It says that whereas climate change, pollution, and environmental destruction have exacerbated systemic racial, regional, social, environmental, and economic injustices by disproportionately affecting indigenous peoples, communities of colors, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, disabled people, and youth. So it recognizes all of these communities, and it recognizes that climate change, that pollution, and that environmental destruction have taken the issues that we already see, those systemic, very real racial, social, environmental, and economic injustices, and it has now kind of amplified those issues. And so that's another reason why it's such an important resolution, because it recognizes the systemic issues at hand, and the fact that what we're seeing currently is playing into that. It's not helping the situation. And so even being able to kind of have a resolution that focuses on that truth and works on alleviating the issues that we're facing because of this, because of climate change and because of systemic racism and all these other topics, that makes it just even more pertinent and even more pressing for us to like push for, and for us to actually see become like a factor of our community.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, I'm recording. So, sorry, did I mess up the slides really quick, Andrea?
We're
no,
good. You're on the right slide.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. So we talked about environmental injustice. So environmental justice is putting justice where the injustice was. So we already kind of touched up on this, but it's the ensuring that all Americans have access to clean air, clean water, clean health, like healthcare, clean food, things that you would think are things that are human rights and things that you would assume people already have access to. But I mean, apparently not. It's stopping fossil fuel projects. Even right now during quarantine, that's let a lot of oil companies, a lot of polluters to kind of have to let go of, no one's paying attention right now, so let's pollute even more. And so it's putting pressure on these corporations and stopping their projects that are harming our environment and us. So, and it's also to level out the economic playing field, which currently disadvantages certain populations by creating millions of $15 an hour safe union jobs. So we have billionaires, and then we have people who are barely working on, I believe, minimum wage in Detroit's around $9. So it's kind of trying to even it out, and it just like, yeah, trying to even it out. Let's put it there. And it actively acknowledges that all treaties with Indigenous people, respecting Indigenous sovereignty, and it mandates free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous peoples for all decisions that affect Indigenous people and traditional territories. So environmental justice is reforming the systematic prejudices and while also being intentional on how our policies do directly impact marginalized communities. But yeah. And so this is kind of what the Green New Deal says about it, but
yeah, go ahead.
You want to
go? But yeah, the Green New Deal says that it aims to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of Indigenous people, communities of color, migrant communities, deindustrialized communities, depopulated rural communities, the poor, low-income workers, women, the elderly, the unhoused, disabled people, and youth. So it takes that that last quote that we saw, where we were talking about those who are affected and the reasons why they're affected. And it says, okay, now our goal is to promote justice and equity by stopping the impact, essentially, and the oppression on those communities that are affected.
Cool. So the way forward is the Green New Deal. I think we've all established that so far. But the Green New Deal would overall create radical changes to all sectors of the U.S., the way that our societies work, and the way our economy works. And it's really pushing for a just change and making sure that this solution that we're creating to this crisis is going to be a solution for everybody, not for certain Americans, but all of us, which is something that is one of the bigger things that one of the Detroit's history of white flight and the auto industry, as we all know, has made it super capable of leading this country with a G&D. So there are a lot of labor unions. There's a very strong community that's built. It's seen a lot of this country, or this city, has a lot of history, and a lot of Southeast Michigan has a lot of immigrants. It has a lot of Black and brown organizers who already realize how big of a crisis this is. They really realize the extent of it, and they're already pushing for change, and they're already creating change, and realize that this is a fight that's not it's bigger than just them, and it's not just something that's happening in their neighborhoods. It's happening in communities like theirs across the country. So yeah, this change creates all of us, this change needs all of us, and in order to push forward with a just transition and a greener, sustainable, better future for all of us, we need everyone on board. Not only in Detroit, but across the United States.
Yeah. So looking at a green vision for the future, by providing all people of the United States with high quality healthcare, affordable, safe, and adequate housing, economic security, and clean water, clean air, healthy and affordable food, and access to nature. The Green New Deal would help to pick Detroit back up and push its economy instead of living forward. We saw Detroit's willingness and push for this transition during the 2020 election primaries in Detroit, where Black and brown organizers kind of came together to create that Frontline Detroit Coalition, and demanding that the Green New Deal be placed at the forefront of that conversation. And so that is the vision that we would see from the Green New Deal.
Yeah, so that's starting to wrap up our presentation. So here's some action items you can do, because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, well, what can I do to get involved? So you can become a Vote for a Future ambassador with this link. This link we can put up on the 0 Hour channel, or you can just jot it down. Sign up for updates at voteforafuture.org. We have a lot of amazing things planned out from now to November. We have great projects going on. So if you want to stay tuned, if you want to know what's happening, definitely sign up for those updates. Follow us on Instagram at Vote for a Future V4OF Detroit, where we'll also be posting and updating our new projects, what's going on. Talk to people in your community, in your family, about the Green New Deal. What are their thoughts? Maybe if they have some misconceptions, if they have fake news, tell them, no, you can still fly. It doesn't mean you have to go vegan. Correct those things that you just learned. And yeah, you can host your own community webinar with these slides that you can also find on Vote for a Future's page. And yeah, do whatever you can. Get involved in your own communities. Look in your own backyard, because that's where the problem is. A lot of people like to other the climate crisis as something that's happening in developing countries across the world, but it's happening in your own backyard. So the first step is a conversation. It's acknowledging what's going on, and then moving forward and deciding what are you going to do about it.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and some other action items. are starting a sister chapter. Take an opportunity to be a leader in your community and take a stand. So uh, you can start or join a sister chapter by going to thisiszerohour.org/chapters. And I definitely recommend it if this is something that you're interested in taking part of. Yeah, and of course, a very, very important action item is registering to vote. Um, so you can actually scan the QR code that we have on the screen, and it'll take you to our page where you can go and register to vote or check the registration status. Um, and that is also extremely important that you do vote for our future.
Yeah. And if you can't vote, tell your parents about it. Tell them to vote for your future, because everyone needs to go and vote. Yeah, and so the last thing we have is in Q&As. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedules. I'm sure everyone's got a lot going on. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them and we can talk.
Yeah.
Here, let me stop sharing this so then I can. Okay. Cool. So if anyone has any questions or comments, you can drop them in the comments and we can answer them. But if not, thank you so much for listening. We hope you took something away from this. And yeah, if you ever have any questions, you can DM us at V4OF Detroit or at This Is Your Hours page, and we'd be more than happy to answer them. Cool.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for coming. Do we just like X out, leave studio?